My Lords, I rise to move Amendments 55A, 55B and 56A, which appear in my name, and also to express support for the Noble Lady Baroness Whittaker's amendment and a great appreciation for her enormous hard work on this issue over very long periods of time. I should perhaps declare my position as a member of the APPG for Roma's, Gypsy and Travellers. Now, persecution of Gypsy and Roma people in the UK goes back a very long way, to soon after they arrived as an established community on these shores. They were banished in 1531 and again in 1544. In 1665, an Edinburgh merchant was allowed by the Privy Council to transport a range of people, including Egyptians, as Gypsies were then known, to Barbados and Jamaica. In 1715, 9 women and men were in the same manner transported to Virginia. There's no evidence that any of these people had committed any crime. My Lords, we're quite a few centuries on from the history that I'm citing, yet somehow we find ourselves in a sadly familiar place. A part of the law explicitly targeting people who've been long subject to the prejudice, the discrimination, the bigotry that the Noble Lady Baroness Whittaker and indeed the Noble Lady Baroness Brinton referred to. And Part 4 of this bill has caused great distress, concern and fear among the people who risk being affected by it, and a great outcry from our entire human rights community. And that's why I am moving 55A, 55B and 56A, which would strike out all of Part 4 of this bill. I don't believe that I can move in any other way at this point, much as I would accept and will indeed, should the Noble Lady Baroness Whittaker put her amendment to a vote, be voting for that. But it is my intention to test the opinion of the House, because this, I believe, is a moral point that cannot be allowed to simply drift by. And I would say to all the members of your Lordship's House that no one can claim to be unaware of these issues. Should it be new to anyone, I'd point you to an article on open democracy by Luke Smith, an article in The Independent by Lisa Smith, and the submission from the Friends, Families and Travellers group to the government inquiry. I'd also point out to the fact that George Monbiot has described Part 4 of the bill as it now stands as legislative cleansing. Now, in the second reading of this bill, the Noble Lady, the Minister, claimed that this is all about protecting all communities from distress and loss of amenity caused by unauthorised encampments. But the Noble Lady Baroness Brinton referred to the police's reaction to this, and I'll expand a little on what she said. Indeed, in the response to the government consultation in 2018, 75% of police responses said current police powers were sufficient, and 85% of police responses did not support the criminalisation of unauthorised encampments. And I'm going to repeat the conclusion given by the National Police Chiefs Council, because I really think this must not be ignored. This is the National Police Chiefs Council, quote, "We believe that criminalising unauthorised encampments is not acceptable. Complete criminalisation of trespass would likely lead to legal action in terms of incompatibility with regards to the Human Rights Act 1998 and the Public Sector Equality Duty under the Equality Act 2010, most likely on the grounds of how could such an increase in powers be proportionate and reasonable when there are insufficient pitches and stopping places." Now, my Lords, I have to apologise to your Lordship's House that I was unable to be in the committee stage in this part of the policing bill because I was at the COP26 climate talks. And as the very small green group, we have to divide our resources as best we can. But I thank my noble friend Baroness Jones of Morscombe for her explanation and expression of my intent to do this at this stage. And as my noble friend said then, these clauses are completely unacceptable, discriminatory and dangerous. And that's why I'm making this move today. Now, At second reading, again, the noble lady, the minister, said that this was delivering on a manifesto commitment. And I can imagine that it may well be said that under the conventions of this House, the Lords are not supposed to thwart things in an elected party's manifesto, even when that manifesto won the backing of only 44% of voters. But what when something is simply morally wrong? Is racist? Is risks putting us on a potential slippery slope to horrors that the world has seen before? Now, I think it's also worth asking the question, the celebration of British values, and any member of your Lordship's House hasn't seen it, I'd point them to the article by the noble Lord Dubbs in The Independent today addressing that very point. And I'd also point them to the conclusions of the Joint Committee on Human Rights. Gypsy, Roma and travellers would be in the position of potentially committing a criminal offence without having done anything at all, merely having given the impression to another private citizen that they intend to do something. This is very dangerous territory, which risks creating offences whose elements could largely be based on the prejudice of the accuser and perhaps the justice system. Now, my Lords, to really explain why it's my intention to at least test the opinion of your Lordship's House, at least on 55A, and see how that goes, I would point out that blowing a dog whistle doesn't just create a momentary disturbance. Blowing a dog whistle calls the pack together. And we know that in a pack, behaviour is different, potentially more violent, more dangerous, more disastrous than people acting alone. The amendments, commendable as they are, do not silence the dog whistle. If we look at history, I have to say to your Lordship's House that I have to do what I can today to try and ensure that whistle is not blown. So it is my intention to call the vote on 55A.